It was late October in northern Oregon, and the rain hadn't let up all day. I was 27, living alone in a rented cabin tucked away at the edge of Tillamook Forest. I had just gotten home from my evening shift at a local hardware store and was curled up on my bed with a blanket, watching a horror movie on my laptop. Outside, the wind howled and the trees creaked. Thunderstorms weren't common around here, but tonight the sky was angry. The power had flickered a few times already. An hour after I got home, while I was halfway through my movie, I heard something downstairs. It wasn't thunder. It was sharper, like something falling over. I froze. The cabin wasn't that big, so any unusual sound echoed more than it should. My first thought was that it was just the building settling. But something about the sound made the hair on my arms stand up. Still wrapped in my blanket, I crept downstairs to the living room. Everything looked normal. I checked the doors locked. Windows sealed tight. I filled my water bottle at the kitchen sink and shook off the nerves. Probably nothing. I headed back upstairs. I don't think more than 5 minutes passed before I heard it again. This time, I knew exactly what it was: my standing lamp toppling over. I recognized the sound instantly because that lamp had a wobbly base and had fallen before when bumped. It sat awkwardly between the couch and a side table. But what made my stomach twist was the fact that I hadn't been anywhere near it, and the storm hadn't been violent enough to shake the house. Heart thudding, I went downstairs again. Sure enough, the lamp was lying in the middle of the rug. I picked it up, but something felt off, like the air was heavier. It was too quiet for a storm. I stood there, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No creaks. I told myself it was just bad placement, maybe a gust from an unseen draft. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Still, I checked all the rooms, including the small guest room I never used and the tiny utility closet by the back door. Nothing. I returned upstairs and turned the volume down on my movie so I could better hear the storm. Or anything else. I stayed like that for a while. Maybe 45 minutes passed. The rain suddenly sounded different. Not louder, just closer. Like it was inside. The pattern of it didn't match what I was hearing through my window. I paused the movie, stepped into the hallway, and listened. It was coming from downstairs. Slowly, I went down, every creak of the wooden steps making me wince. The sound got clearer as I approached the end of the hallway near the kitchen, specifically, the door to the storage room. That room had one tiny window, and I hadn't been in there since spring. My gut twisted into a knot. I stood in front of the door and reached for the handle. My fingers trembled. When I opened it, cold air and the sound of pouring rain hit me like a wall. The window was wide open. Water had soaked several cardboard boxes below it, and rain splattered against the windowsill like someone had flung it open just minutes ago. I never opened that window. Ever. Shaking, I slammed it shut and locked it. I turned around and stared into the dark hallway of my house, heart hammering so loudly I thought it would echo. My phone was upstairs, sitting on my bed. I felt completely exposed. My options: run up and grab it or run straight out of the cabin. I decided on a third option: get my car keys. I tiptoed into the kitchen, grabbed them off the hook, and slowly made my way toward the front door. Every inch of me was screaming to move faster, but I was terrified of making noise. I had just passed the base of the stairs when I heard it. Rapid footsteps pounding across the upstairs hallway directly above me. They were fast and deliberate, heading straight for the staircase. I sprinted. I didn't think. I didn't look. I just ran. I slammed open the front door and leapt into the rain. Thunder cracked above as I jumped into my car, jamming the key into the ignition with shaking hands. As I backed out of the driveway, I glimpsed movement in an upstairs window, but I didn't look long enough to see more. I sped off, soaked and breathless. I called 911 from the car. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me until the sheriff's deputy met me at the nearest gas station. When they searched the cabin, they found no one. No fingerprints. No signs of forced entry, except the open window in the storage room. What they did note was that the wall with that window was directly behind the end table where the lamp sat. The working theory was that someone had pushed or kicked the wall from the outside to force the window open and the vibrations knocked the lamp over. But that doesn't explain the footsteps. It also doesn't explain where that person went, or what they planned to do once I was asleep. It's been months since that night, but I still don't sleep with my bedroom door fully closed. I still keep my phone in my pocket, not on my bed. And sometimes, when the wind howls outside the cabin, I wonder if I really got away, or if I just got lucky. It was a cold, stormy night in early December. I was 24 and had been working the night shift at a remote roadside convenience store off Highway 9 in rural Montana. The place was small, dimly lit, and surrounded by forest. I usually worked afternoons, but that night, I was covering for a coworker who'd called in sick. The shift ran from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Not ideal, but I needed the overtime. I arrived a few minutes before 10. The manager, Rick, looked relieved to see me and bolted out the door before the storm picked up. I settled in behind the counter, sipping cheap coffee and listening to the radio. The store was dead quiet. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Rain lashed against the glass in bursts, and I had a feeling the storm was going to get worse. After about an hour, I threw on my hoodie and stepped outside to secure the trash cans and bring in a couple crates left near the pumps. As I ran back and forth, I noticed a man standing just off the side of the road. He was drenched, pacing slowly, arms crossed tightly against his chest. There were no houses nearby, no cars parked along the road. I figured maybe he was waiting for a ride that bailed. It was weird, sure, but not alarming yet. I finished up and went back inside, shaking off the cold. 2 hours passed. The storm grew violent. Thunder boomed overhead, and the wind slammed so hard into the building that one of the front doors flew open with a loud crack. I rushed out from behind the counter and fought the wind to slam it shut, sliding the deadbolt into place. Then I headed to the back storage room, where there were no windows and just enough space to wait things out. I stood there for a bit, letting the storm rage on outside. Maybe 30 minutes later, over the sound of rain and gusts, I heard something faint, but steady. A banging. I thought at first it was just the wind rattling something loose, but the noise was too rhythmic. 3 knocks. A pause. 3 more. My stomach turned. I walked slowly toward the front of the store and peered down the aisles toward the entrance. Through the rain-covered glass doors, I saw a shadowy figure. Someone was out there, hitting the doors, looking directly in. I moved quickly. Despite everything in me screaming not to, I unlocked the door. The man rushed inside the second I opened it, nearly knocking me backward. I slammed the door shut again and rebolted it. He was soaked from head to toe. Water streamed off his clothes, pooling on the tile. His head was down, and he didn't say a word. He just started pacing back and forth in front of the snack aisle. I stepped back, uneasy. It was the same guy I'd seen earlier near the road. Had he really been outside all this time? "Hey, man, are you okay?" I asked. "Need me to call someone?" No answer. Just pacing. The guy's eyes were hollow, unfocused. His breathing was steady but wrong. I couldn't place it. I watched for a few more seconds before quietly stepping toward the counter, hoping to grab the phone. But as I picked up the receiver, his head jerked toward me. His eyes snapped into focus like a machine locking onto a target. "Don't," he said. One word. Cold. Direct. I froze. His voice had weight. Authority. And something in his face told me he wasn't bluffing. That's when I noticed his hands bloody, bruised, cut up along the knuckles like he'd been punching brick walls or worse. I looked too long, and when my gaze met his again, his eyes were burning with something dangerous. I gently put the phone down. He stared at me for what felt like a full minute, like he was calculating something. Then, without a word, he turned and resumed pacing. The storm outside intensified. Wind howled, lights flickered, and the entire building shook like it might collapse. But inside the store, it was dead silent except for the sound of this man's wet shoes squeaking as he paced the floor. I felt trapped. Every option seemed bad. Run for the door and risk being tackled. Call the cops and risk setting him off. I debated hiding in the storage room but figured I wouldn't make it without him noticing. So I did nothing. I just stood there and watched him pace. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I counted every second. My heart was pounding the entire time. The man never spoke again. He never touched anything. Never sat down. Just paced. Back and forth. Back and forth. Then, without warning, he stopped. Looked at me one last time. Walked to the door. Slid the bolt back. And stepped out into the storm. The second he was gone, I locked the doors again and called 911. It took nearly 40 minutes for a deputy to arrive. Storm delays, they said. I explained everything, but by the time they searched the surrounding area, the man was long gone. No footprints. No ID. No vehicle. The next day, I saw something on the local news that made my blood run cold. A woman who worked at a law office 15 miles away had gone missing the same night. She was last seen leaving work around 11 p.m. about an hour after I saw that man outside. Her car was still in the lot. She never made it home. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe I'm connecting dots that don't exist. But the look in that man's eyes, the blood on his knuckles, it keeps me awake some nights. Whatever he was doing out there in the storm, I think I almost became part of it. It was just past 2 a.m. on a freezing January night. I had just gotten off my shift at a private security firm in Buffalo, New York. I'm 32, and my job often has me driving weird hours, especially during winter months when demand for night patrol increases. That night, snow had turned to sleet, and then to pouring rain. Streets were slick, windshields iced over, and visibility was barely a few feet in front of me. Instead of taking the highway home like I usually did, I figured I'd save time cutting through the back roads along a wooded stretch near Cold Creek. I'd done it dozens of times before and never had a problem. The storm had driven nearly everyone off the roads. Mine was the only vehicle for miles. About 10 minutes into that isolated drive, I hit a section of road that dipped down near the base of a ridge, and that's when I saw it, a wide pool of dark flood water stretching across both lanes. It was impossible to tell how deep it was, but it looked serious. Definitely not something I was willing to test. Frustrated, I sighed, and shifted into reverse to start a 3-point turn. That's when my car's backup alarm began screaming. I slammed the brakes. My heart jumped into my throat. I looked over my shoulder and froze. There was a car directly behind me. No headlights. No engine sound. Just there. Parked less than 2 feet from my bumper. And I swear, there hadn't been anyone behind me the entire drive. The road was so narrow I would have noticed. I sat there for a few seconds, waiting for them to back up or flash their lights, anything to indicate they'd seen me. But nothing. They didn't move. Just sat there. The rain intensified, ticking loudly against my windshield. I honked twice. Still no reaction. That's when the driver's door of the other car creaked open. A man stepped out slowly. He wore dark clothes soaked by the rain, his hood pulled over his face. He walked with calm, deliberate steps toward my driver's side window and began knocking. Knock. 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 I didn't roll the window down. I just stared at him, trying to make out his expression beneath the shadow of his hood. But he didn't speak. He didn't even try to gesture. He just stood there, knocking, over and over again, soft and steady. In the middle of the storm. On a dark, flooded road in the woods. Something was wrong. I put the car in drive, creeping forward slightly, careful not to go too deep into the flood zone. To my unease, the man followed alongside me, keeping pace, never breaking eye contact. At first, I thought he might have been drunk or high. His strange movements, the complete lack of headlights, his silent behavior. But then just when I started to convince myself this was some weird misunderstanding, another knock came. From the passenger side window. I jerked around and saw a second man. Dressed the same. Hood pulled low. No expression. Just standing there, hand on the glass. And behind him, a third figure was approaching from the tree line. That was the moment I panicked. My instincts screamed at me that this wasn't random. This was a setup. I slammed on the gas, tires skidding as I pushed my car forward into the edge of the flooded road, trying to swing around. The car fishtailed violently. For 3 or 4 seconds, I had no traction. I thought I'd lost control completely. But somehow, it caught just in time. I swerved around the submerged edge of the water and sped off, adrenaline pounding in my ears. I didn't dare look back. Only when I made it back to the main road did I finally call 911. I pulled into a well-lit gas station and waited for the sheriff's deputy to meet me. Later that night, they drove back to the area. The strange part? The car that had been behind me was still there. Abandoned, lights still off, but none of the men were anywhere in sight. When they ran the plates, they found the car had been stolen 2 months prior from a dealership in Pennsylvania over 300 miles away. No prints. No trace. Nothing. To this day, I have no idea what they wanted or what would have happened if I hadn't reacted in time. Maybe they were planning to rob me. Maybe something worse. But one thing I do know. That road, those woods, that silence between the knocks, it still haunts me every time I drive alone at night. Whatever their intentions were, I came too close to finding out. And I never take shortcuts anymore.